Mellow greetings, everybody. My name is James. I'm from the internet, and today we are going to be talking about what the hell's going on with the police state. That's right. Going back to the tried and true, our reoccurring weekly segment. When I take a moment, I jaunt through the internet, I find a whole bunch of stories about police fuckery from all around the country that you might not know about, you might not have heard about, because they weren't publicized in the national media, or they didn't occur in your locale. Or, like the vast majority of Americans, if you're watching this, you work 80 billion hours a week, have to take care of your family, and probably don't have time to go onto the internet and spend hours a week searching for every last piece of police fuckery. But don't worry. That's what I'm here for. So let me show you what the hell's been going on with the police state this week. Wandering cops shuffle departments abusing citizens. One of the biggest roadblocks to police accountability is so-called wandering cops, who lose their jobs in one place only to be rehired in another. Also, they didn't lose their jobs. They know where they are. It's not like they just fucking misplaced them like their keys and they were like, oh, where did I put my job? They were fired. They were terminated. They were banned from working in a police department because of behavioral or misconduct issues. But sure, national media, let's soft pedal it and talk about how they lost their job. Oh, where the fuck did that thing go? A study of wandering officers in the Yale Law Journal last year provided the first systematic look at how prevalent wandering officers are. The answer? Well, wandering officers are prevalent and often run into disciplinary problems after they are rehired someplace else. Professors studied data in Florida, a state that took important steps to impose accountability on police officers after the Liberty City riots of 1980 left 18 dead. Those riots followed the acquittal of officers prosecuted for the death of Arthur McDuffie, a 33-year-old black salesman beaten by police after they chased him for traffic violations on his black and orange Kawasaki motorcycle. 4 officers who were tried had a total of 47 previous citizen complaints against them. Now, for decades, people who have been pushing hard for police reform often focus on this specific problem: wandering officers. Cops who rack up dozens of civilian complaints and even end up killing people, who then get fired from their job, go to another department in another county or another state somewhere else, and then can get rehired on the spot and go back to, I don't know, violating people's civil rights and killing people. Whoa. In any given year over the last 3 decades, an average of roughly 1,100 full-time law enforcement officers in Florida walk the streets having been fired in the past, and almost 800 of them having been fired for misconduct, not counting the many who were fired and then reinstated in arbitration. These officers are subsequently fired and subjected to, quote, moral character complaints at elevated rates relative to both officers hired as rookies and veterans with clean professional histories. In other words, once the bad apple sits in a barrel and spoils the bunch, well, then they kick it out and it goes into another barrel where it proceeds to spoil that whole bunch. Lather, rinse, repeat. Oh, by the way, don't expect this to change anytime soon, because police unions are the only unions that Republican legislatures won't fuck with, and the only union that all the anti-labor conservatives still worship. Next, ex-Border Patrol agent identified as serial East Valley rapist. A recently retired U.S. Border Patrol agent has been arrested as the suspected serial rapist who terrorized an Arizona community 2 decades ago, according to the police. The Mesa Police Department used DNA to identify John Daly, 57, as the East Valley rapist who sexually assaulted 8 women in 4 Arizona cities between July of '99 and October of 2001. Quote, the Mesa Police Department, using DNA technology, identified and arrested the East Valley rapist 22 years after his first known offense. Wow. Only took 22 years. Hey, fun side note here. Most large police departments around the country literally have hordes and hordes of backlogged rape kits and DNA kits waiting to be tested. But instead, police would rather spend their billions of dollars a year in federal grant dollars on MRAPs and 50 cals and stun grenades and body armor rather than testing rape kits. Why? Because apparently other police officers, Border Patrol agents, and federal authorities will eventually get outed as being rapists. Yeah, thanks for the blinding alacrity in solving that fucking crime. Next! Recording a cop in Florida, one woman got arrested for it. Hey, I'm not a woman, but I got arrested for it a bunch of times too. A divided Florida appeals court ruling on Wednesday upheld the arrest of a woman who filmed officers outside a movie theater. The decision in a Boynton Beach case comes amid the nation's racial justice awakening after deadly police encounters with black citizens were caught on camera, and it leaves open the question of whether a person recording George Floyd's murder could have been arrested in the state of Florida for doing the same thing. Officers had the authority to arrest a young mother named Tasha Ford, who recorded them detaining her teenage son back in 2009, based on a 2-to-1 opinion by judges at the 4th District Court of Appeals. Quote, in short, she obstructed their investigation and proceeding of her son's detention, a lawful execution of their duty, stated the 2 judges who voted to uphold the arrest. Of specific note in this article is that, number 1, it took a full 12 years for this case to come all the way back around and be heard at the appellate state level. This right here is some straight up, full on authoritarian trash. And it's a couple of authoritarian organizations washing each other's hands so that the status quo can be maintained while your, quote, rights continue to be whittled away until they are nary visible. Next! Women sue LAPD after a group of cops who falsely believed they'd stolen U-Haul hold them at gunpoint. According to the complaint obtained by the Los Angeles Times, Shabani Balsaver, a film production coordinator, rented a U-Haul truck to move to a new apartment last year with a friend who was helping her move. She says in the suit that they were getting close to her new apartment when their vehicle was surrounded by at least 10 LAPD officers who had their guns drawn at them, and an LAPD helicopter hovered overhead. Officers allegedly ordered her to drop the key outside the window. The women were then instructed to get out of the vehicle with their hands over their heads. Police then allegedly forced the women to lay face down in the street. The women claimed they were unable to clearly hear the police commands because the hovering helicopter drowned out the officers' voices. In their complaint, the women alleged that they were not told why they were pulled over until they were already handcuffed. Balsaver then allegedly told an officer that she had a receipt for the truck which she had rented earlier that day. It turns out that weeks before, this U-Haul had been reported stolen and was then reportedly found, and the stolen vehicle file was all taken care of. But somebody didn't get the memo, so instead they got all swatted up with full fucking air support to arrest 2 women driving a U-Haul around. At no point did they ask to see a receipt. At no point did they ask for identification. They merely ordered people at gunpoint to do everything they told them to do without speaking or else. That is how we do policing here in the United States of America. Don't ask questions, comply, or die. Next! Internal investigation finds cops shouldn't have fired a single shot into Breonna Taylor's home. Wow, imagine that. Even the cops turned around and went to the cops and went, dude, stop being so fucking shooty. Also, fun fact, none of the cops lost their job, and only 1 cop even had charges filed against him, and that was for entering the neighbor's apartment. That's right, nobody was charged with firing 40 to 50 bullets into an apartment building and killing a woman lying in her bed. But don't worry, fellow taxpayers, the city still paid out a sizable 7-figure sum to her family. And of course, those 7 figures don't come from the police budget. They don't come from the pension or the retirement plans of any of the cops who executed Breonna Taylor. They come out of checks, notes, your taxes. Congratulations, everybody. You helped pay somebody $5 million for having their family executed by the police who were investigated and were found to have not even needed to have fired a single fucking bullet, but they did it anyway. Next, Washington, D.C. police release body cam video of drag racing cops crashing. Ah, yes, in this one, a bunch of police thought it would be fun to go drag racing in a residential neighborhood that had a speed limit of 25 or 35 miles an hour. You know, the kind of activity that would get you either put in jail or shot. They just did it for shits and giggles. Why? Because a different standard is applied to the police by the police. Nothing about this is out of bounds. Nothing about this is out of the ordinary at all. Just boys being boys and maybe getting a slap on the wrist. Next, Rhode Island investigating death of man handcuffed by police. Stop me if you've heard this fucking story before. Officers were called at around 12:30 a.m. Friday on a report of a man who was screaming in the street and possibly under the influence of narcotics, according to an account by the Providence police. They found him groaning unintelligibly as he rolled onto the ground next to a ball field. The officers called for an ambulance from the Providence Fire Department and then spent more than 10 minutes trying to talk to the man and calm him down, but he did not answer questions or follow commands. Then the officers had what police described as a minor struggle with the man as they handcuffed him to protect rescue workers. Also, they rolled him over, kneeled on him to handcuff him, and then he stopped responding and sometime later died. Of particular note here is the fact that this ABC News article only quotes the police account. They're just quoting the police verbatim. This is the exact same thing they said after Derek Chauvin killed George Floyd. Oh, there was apparently some kind of a scuffle, and then he had a medical emergency and I don't know, somehow died. Yeah, we've heard this one before. Don't worry, I'm sure in another week or another month, I'll be back here again with an update on this story. Until then, next! Sergeant with Falmouth Police Department arrested in domestic violence investigation. Deputies responded to a home in the 1000 block of McNay Road in Falmouth around 1:25 a.m. for a report of a, quote, physical domestic altercation where shots were fired. The sheriff said the location they responded to was the home of Sergeant Mark McClure of the Falmouth Police Department. McClure was taken into custody and faces domestic violence charges. Wow, imagine discharging a firearm during the commission of a domestic assault and there being absolutely no firearm charge applied. Wow. They even go light on other police officers when they beat women. Next, prominent police union leader charged in rape of coworker after officer's ball. I am not even going to go into the disgusting ass fucking details of this one. Suffice to say that cops even rape other cops as long as they're women and they know they have other male cops who will have their back. This guy is on security video in the fucking hotel, pushing the woman into her hotel room, and then later crawling back out of that hotel room, going downstairs and going to his room where his wife and kids were sleeping. But don't worry, he's already been released on a very reasonable bail. Next. From the propaganda department, it's our old friends at Fox News. I got a double header for you here. You ready? First one, police brace for federal law enforcement reform, defend tried and true tactics. That's right, everybody. We only kill like 1,200 people a year execution style. It's not a big deal. If you defund us, well, we might have to kill even more people. Let's see what else Fox has for me. Hit me. California police officer killed in shooting, another officer injured. This is a tragedy beyond measure. Yes. The most brutal form of all propaganda, the sympathy propaganda. Please note, Fox News never discusses the tragedy beyond measure when the police execute a 12-year-old boy like Tamir Rice. They don't discuss the tragedy beyond measure when the police execute Philando Castile, a licensed gun owner who was merely providing his fucking identification to the police after they requested it. No, Fox News never has any sympathy or any notes of an event being tragic beyond measure as long as it's the police being killed. That's all they care about. That's the tragedy. So much for all lives matter, huh? Next. And of course, here's the shittiest story you're going to see all goddamn day, courtesy of me. Indiana man, a former Park Forest police officer, accused of molesting girl over 14 years. By the way, that doesn't say he molested a 14-year-old girl. That says he molested a young girl for 14 years. A former Park Forest, Illinois police officer has been charged in Lake Superior Court with molesting a girl over a 14-year period, telling police she could only estimate 1,500 times that he molested or raped her before they finally arrested him. Harry Gillespie Nicholson IV of unincorporated Lake County near Lowell was charged with multiple felonies. His next court date is upcoming May 27th. A judge entered a not guilty plea April 8th and a no contact order was granted. Bond was set at $11,500. Nicholson was fired as a Park Forest police officer after he was accused of sexually assaulting a child there, the affidavit alleges. This sounds familiar. I feel like just a couple weeks ago, I brought you a story from the Boston PD that sounded exactly the same. Long-timer cop spends long time sexually molesting people. All the other police just kind of go like this. And then when it finally comes out, they just let him leave the job and don't actually charge him. So then what does he do? He keeps molesting and raping children. And yes, the only reason that kind of continued behavior happens is because other police allow it to happen, because they will always defend each other before they defend you or even a child who's being raped by one of them. So if you take nothing away from this week's installment of, so what the hell's going on with the police state? Take away this. All of your calls to defund the police, to disarm the police, to get rid of the police is finally starting to have an effect. So for the love of God, don't let up. Push your foot down further onto the accelerator until that fucker hits the floor, and you keep going. Because if they're running scared now, they're going to be running even more scared 6 months from now when they finally, for the first time in nearly a century, have their budgets cut. Until next time, my name is James. I'm from the internet, and I am out. Peace.